This is a short guide on how to fight with the MiG-29 beyond visual range. I'll walk you through the steps while showing them to you on the footage in the background. I'll also try to add some useful tips. First step will be getting fast and high. The air is thinner at higher altitudes, which will give your missiles more range and speed. Objects in motion stay in motion, so a missile fired at higher speed has the advantage over the missile fired at slower speed. The MiG-29 has a massive engine power in afterburner mode. Use this to your advantage. While climbing, make sure you have selected the R-27ER missile, as it is by far the best choice for BVR fights. This is also a good time to select the radar mode of your choice. In my experience, the TWS head-on mode works best at the beginning of the match, as both teams are flying towards each other. TWS mode also gives you a good visual information where the enemy team is going, so you can prioritize your targets. It's generally best to select the target that presents the most danger to you. The closer the enemy is, the higher he flies and the faster he is coming your direction, the more threatening he is. When you selected the target, it's time to get a hard lock. At this point, your enemy's RWR starts ringing, so he knows someone is locking him. The RWR also gives him information about the direction of the threat. It doesn't tell him anything about the range though. He would have to see you visually or on his radar to guess who's locking him. If I manage to get a lock on first, I personally like to wait a bit to see the enemy's reaction. You carry only 2 R-27 missiles, so you generally want to make them count. You can see his reaction on the HUD. Below the target is a circle with a comma. The comma tells you in which direction is he coming. Best scenario is he will continue flying your direction, so your missile will have to travel shorter distance, and you also do not risk losing the lock. The number in the bottom right corner of the target gives you information about your closing speed. Once you think the launching parameters are good, it's time to pull the trigger. Now it's a game of maintaining the lock until the missile impacts, while also making sure you'll stay alive. In order to not lose the lock, you'll have to maintain the target within your radar gimbal limits. You can see on the HUD in the right corner of your screen if you are reaching the limits of your radar. You can see that after firing the missile, I do not continue in the direction of the target. That's because I have confidence that my missile will hit, while I can also hear my RWR beeping, which means someone's locking me up. Being locked up means a possible threat of a missile coming my direction. If you want to stay alive, you have to always predict the worst possible scenario. So by decreasing the altitude, I drag any potential missile into thicker air, which will slow it down. Also, by cranking away from the RWR warning, I am increasing the range that any potential missile will have to travel in order to kill me. Cutting down the power is also a good idea for the same reason. While doing this, I carefully watch my radar's gimbal limit, so I do not lose lock on my target before the impact. The R-27ER has a trick up its sleeve. That trick is a data link function. When you lose the lock, the missile will continue in the target's predicted direction. If you manage to get the lock again, your missile will regain guidance from your aircraft's radar. That said, it still needs to have some energy left and be between you and your target. The R-27ER is also at the moment the fastest missile in Warthunder. Not with the most range, but fastest still, which should give you some confidence when fighting enemies with, for example, AIM-7 Sparrows. There are, of course, many more things to consider. For example, when you see multiple enemies at high altitude coming your way, while everyone from your team is on the deck, it is generally not a good idea to stay high and fight. Denser air at altitude will not make just your missiles more deadly, but also your enemies, while your aircraft won't be able to maneuver as well as on the deck. Defending any missile at altitude is always more difficult than near the ground level. Anyway, this should be enough information to get you started in BVR fighting at top tier right now. Once active radar homing missiles will become common in Warthunder, your tactics will have to adjust. Russian R-77s, America's AIM-120Cs AMRAAMs, European Meteors, etc, etc. This all will sure come one day, but right now, this guide should be more than enough to get you started. And here's some more footage of BVR fights in the MiG-29 to get you a better understanding of how to do it yourself. I promise I'll try to be quiet. Okay, here's one more tip. This is a nice example of defending against radar missiles. You can see on the HUD that the enemy I'm trying to keep a lock on is cranking to the right in almost perfect 90 degrees angle. Because of how pulse Doppler radars work, they struggle to see targets when they fly 90 degrees horizontally to your direction. This is called notching, and it's basically the only reliable way how to defeat radar missiles at close range. Also, don't forget that most missiles will keep flying in your predicted direction after the enemy loses the lock, so just notching isn't enough. You have to also change your altitude so you don't continue flying in the path of enemy missile. Also, popping some chaff to give the missile something to feed on is a good idea, but you have to combine this together. Just flying straight and popping chaff won't help you against enemies with pulse Doppler radars. At long ranges, you can drain their energy by making them turn, dragging them into thicker air, or going cold, but this generally doesn't work when up close. It's also the reason why I lost the lock. That's why I like to wait a bit for enemy's reaction after I lock him up, if I have the time. You can see me here firing the missile very soon after I gained the lock. This is because I got spooked by my RWR for a second, which was telling me I was being locked up, so I assumed there might be a missile coming in my direction. But then the beeping immediately stopped, telling me that I'm probably fine and I can keep pressing the enemy. By shooting the missile, I'm denying the enemy the option to just keep pressing me. He'll have to start defending, otherwise he'll die, which is exactly what he does, and that's fine by me. I have to give these two guys credit for a perfect showcase of how to not fight at altitude. Being this high and this close to the enemy and keeping flying straight is a death sentence. I don't know if the second guy had actually any time to attempt a notch. Maybe he didn't, but he didn't even try. So it's a free kill for me. Yay! Here's a piece of game where you'll see me defeating at least a dozen of enemy missiles. IRs by turning off the afterburners and flaring, and also radar missiles by notching and changing altitude. You can tell by the beeping of my RWR what is coming at me, plus I think I dodged some of those with afterburners on, so they were definitely radar missiles. At the end, I'm rewarded for my effort with a team kill, and that's how it sometimes goes.